Hi, everyone. My name is Kabelo Makwane. I'm the Google South Africa Country Director. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be here. When you think about the youth population in South Africa, let alone Africa as a whole, and how we can continue to harness the youth dividend, we see a accelerated adoption of AI usage in the country in how people live, in how people socialize, in how people commute, and in how people do the productive things that they do in their day-to-day lives. We have a golden opportunity given, our over 40% youth population. And we also have a golden opportunity given that in many respects, Africa as a whole missed a few of the previous revolutions, industrial revolution, etc. And we have the opportunity to leapfrog in digital technology and technology adoption in general. Africa today is one of the continents that is actually mobile first. And we use mobile technologies, to transact, to communicate, and to do the things that we value the most. In the same way, because of the proliferation and adoption of mobile as a platform, AI has become a really, really mainstream technology that people are starting to, natively use in their day-to-day lives to search for information, to complete the tasks that they value, and also to be able to synthesize a lot of information at an instance, given the power of the underlying platforms and the language models. Further to that, there's a piece of this which is for South Africa as well as with the rest of Africa, which is really around digital inclusion, right? And we have the opportunity to mainstream people who are digitally excluded. And digital exclusion happens sometimes just purely because, of the barriers around using keyboards and using those types of technologies which prevent people from being able to interact with technology in a natural human way. So we see a high pace of adoption of AI technologies because it lowers the barriers to how people interact with technology, but also it accelerates how people consume information and also synthesize large amounts of data when completing things and tasks that they value the most. Even as far as just searching for advice, AI has become personal assistants to many of us in our day-to-day lives, right? We treat AI as almost like digital personal assistants, and more so, that trend is going to, is what we think is going to continue to accelerate AI adoption in the country. One of the key things that we, as practitioners, as industry players, and as people who can impact this AI revolution, that we have as a responsibility is how we enable people, to be skilled in it, how we effectively drive awareness, and how we really kind of support the digital adoption journey for a lot of our people who stand to benefit from these emerging technologies. And these are not just, let's call it, restricted to large enterprises, who deploy these platforms at scale across the organizations to drive out efficiencies, etc. But also, if you think about a small business owner, where the business owner is the de facto salesperson, they are the accountant, they are the lawyer, all wrapped in one, and they have to also produce the goods that they take to market. These are the types of technologies that can really create a force multiplier, enabling them to effectively be efficient, but also to cover and complete multiple different types of tasks at pace with what the market and their clientele demand. They accelerate and lower the ability for small business owners in particular, right, to be efficient without spending a lot of resource, because resources are constrained for a lot of SMEs in how they do their own bookkeeping and how they do their own, legal, as well as communication and reaching the target markets, through search, advertising, or whatever the needs or platforms are. So we see that having a material, massive impact in that particular space. And in the same vein, individuals, you and me alike, in what we do, whether it's, students completing their homework and, using tools like guided learning or Notebook LM or any of those types of tools that enable them to synthesize volumes and volumes of data and be able to produce meaningful output. Your Joe Soap on the street, who's looking for information, who's looking for a plumber, who's looking for, a particular service, a hairdresser, an events coordinator, wanting to put together a nice metric dance for their child who's about to finish high school. All of those tasks and activities find relevance and application with artificial intelligence, because the conversations and the search approaches has moved from one word or one letter type of searches. It's conversational. It's as if people are talking to a digital virtual human being on the other end who understands them. And more importantly, from an inclusivity perspective, because of localization of these platforms and language models in their own native language as well. How powerful can that be? Thinking about rural communities who are trying to access services, a new, new parents who've just had a newborn, trying to access information around how they can support their child becomes a real reality, and things that can accelerate digital inclusiveness based on this platform. What becomes important to recognize is that it's difficult for any organization to ignore how this technology is going to fundamentally transform how they do business. We are seeing many applications in many respects where a great many large enterprises have started to deploy these technologies in their day-to-day environment, in their business. From as simple a task as, automated writing of emails, where the AI agents operating within the customer environment or the enterprise's environment are able to auto-generate emails, correspondence, communications within and outside of the office, to automating processes where agents can act on behalf of a process owner, an operations executive, or somebody in the enterprise seeking to complete a particular task. And deploying these agents is becoming more and more mainstream. Businesses are fundamentally, at an inflection point in how they're going to, use these technologies, leverage them to drive out efficiency, but also to scale and also to accelerate their business output and performance. Many companies are grappling with the concept of where, how, what, at what pace to adopt AI. And I think it's incumbent upon us as practitioners to not be bystanders and be passive, but to also support how these technologies find their way meaningfully in helping enterprises to build resilience, to thrive, to be globally competitive, but also to accelerate in being competitive in this particular era. It's fundamentally important for us to make sure that with this revolution, we build solutions that are relevant to our context in Africa. We build solutions that are also going to be solutions that are inclusive, and therefore it's why the work around localization of not just the infrastructure, i.e., making sure that it lands within the region, but also localization in terms of how these models are, use data and how they generate outputs, and how we interact with them. More importantly, in our own languages, it's fundamentally important for us to get that right. We have an opportunity to be meaningful participants and to shape and influence these global technologies that are used to be very locally relevant to the African continent, context, and the content in Africa. Many people will be familiar with the proverbial stereotype, which is something that has to be trained out of these models. When you prompt a large language model to show you a picture of Africa, in previous times, it would typically display an Africa that is just rural wildlife, as if you are in the middle of nowhere in the Kruger Park type of thing. And that's the pictorial representation of what the model is trained on. More and more now, generating prompts starts to include more let's call it relevant context, because Africa is not one-dimensional. So the responsibility resides with all the users plus the participants in this particular space to ensure that it's relevant, these models are relevant, and they also are contextually attuned to what Africa is and what Africa represents in its current form. We have an opportunity as well to start to mainstream, youth particularly who are in this space, wanting to create products, wanting to create innovation, and wanting to also, produce things that are exportable to the rest of the world. Innovations can take the form of addressing, our societal needs. For an example, one of the more, let's call it, commonly cited challenges across Africa is how to deal with reaching communities that are, situated in informal settlements. And today, there's already innovations based on AI that are able to address that, with the combination of these AI models together with mapping technology. We are able to now formalize communities that ordinarily previously would have been very difficult to reach, so that governments can provide services, so that enterprises can reach them with the services that they require the most. And it's with that mentality of how we are solving for African challenges that we actually are innovating in ways that can also even solve for the rest of the world, because we are not the only emerging market. And so there's an opportunity really for, let's call it, tech unicorns to be born out of the African and South African context, whether it's in the fintech space, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in mining and resources. In all these industries, Africa has a play because we are participants in these industries, and we have the ability to export even with technology solutions that talks to these challenges. As industry players, we all have a responsibility to ensure that the use and dissemination and adoption of this technology is done in a responsible way. We've seen instances where the technology is coming of age, but it's not perfect yet. There's still challenges around, hallucination. There's still a lot of things to be considered around the ethical use of AI technology. In areas such as, respect for privacy, in areas such as respect for intellectual property rights, and many other similar types of areas where the use of these technologies cannot override what, is the guiding principles from a legal and a fairness and privacy point of view. So with that in mind, we do need to fill the void which currently exists as industry participants, as students in academia, as professionals in this particular space, as thought leaders. We have a responsibility to participate meaningfully, and also as technology, OEMs and manufacturers, we all have a joint mutual responsibility to ensure that when these technologies are adopted, they do not unnecessarily or cause undue harm to the societies that use them. And that's one of the raging debates these days around the ethical use of AI, the responsible use of AI, and ensuring that all of these principles, which we have observed with the use of other technologies, continue to to also guide and form guiding principles for how this AI evolution is unfolding. And in that same vein, we in South Africa particularly have an opportunity to step into supporting, government, enterprises and the like, just in terms of formulating, coming up with policies that will responsibly govern the use of AI, but at the same time not stifle or thwart innovation. And that's a difficult balance to strike all the time because typically legislation lags behind the pace at which technology evolves. We've seen in recent times some of the unfortunate mishaps and missteps just in terms of policy formulation processes, which we all have a collective responsibility to help support, and ensuring that ultimately the policies, the rules, the regulations are suitable for different segments of our society, protecting, the rights of children against abuse and protecting their rights in terms of privacy, but at the same time ensuring that there's good sort of legal, ethical guiding principles all around for society to benefit and not be harmed by these technologies. When I think about the AI, the South Africa AI Awards, it's an opportunity and a platform for us to begin to actually, not just surface all the good innovation, the good innovators, the entrepreneurs that are taking full advantage and building solutions and building, saleable, exportable products based on these platforms. But also it's an opportunity to highlight and bring awareness around some of these issues, these really, really important, but also very complex issues that we have to contend with as a society between the adoption of technology, its ethical use, the rights of society, as well as how do we actually foster human ingenuity, continue to foster human ingenuity and innovation. And that's why for me, being nominated to be an anchor judge and participate in this space, not just because, I'm the Google country director, but because I feel a sense of responsibility as a passionate person in technology. And as a business person, I feel there's a responsibility that behooves all of us to make sure that we continue to leverage these technologies in a way that benefits humankind and society in general.